The spirit board was old, it was dusty and worn. No one knew where it came from. It appeared in the attic of the old Victorian house. It called to anyone who dared to look at it. The board was a portal to the other side. Some said it was cursed, others said it was a harmless game. But everyone agreed it was dangerous. The spirit board was a doorway to the unknown. It promised answers, but it delivered only terror. Many had tried to destroy it. They burned it. They buried it. They even tried to throw it away, but it always came back. The spirit board was waiting. It wanted to be found. The old house stood at the edge of town, shrouded in mystery and tales of the past. It was a place of whispers and shadows, where the wind seemed to carry secrets through the trees. 5 teenagers stood on the porch, their hearts pounding with a mix of excitement and fear. They were drawn to the house, unable to resist its eerie allure and the promise of an unforgettable night. The teenagers dared to enter, pushing open the creaky door with hesitant expressions, their breaths held in anticipation. They were looking for a thrill, something to break the monotony of their small-town lives. But what they found was something far more sinister, lurking in the shadows, waiting for them. There was Jake, the leader, always the first to take a step into the unknown. He was always up for a challenge, his determination unwavering even in the face of fear. Next to him was Emily, the skeptic, her arms crossed and her expression doubtful. She didn't believe in ghosts, often rolling her eyes at the mere mention of the supernatural, but deep down she was secretly scared, her bravado masking her true feelings. Then there was Ben, the jokester, always ready with a laugh to ease the tension. He tried to lighten the mood, cracking jokes to keep the fear at bay. But even he felt a chill run down his spine, the gravity of the situation sinking in. There was Chloe, the quiet one, her thoughtful nature making her more attuned to the house's ominous presence. She had a bad feeling about this, her unease growing with every step they took. And lastly, there was Max, the techie, always with his camera in hand, ready to capture every moment. He brought his camera to document everything, hoping to catch something extraordinary on film. They had heard the stories, passed down through generations, each one more chilling than the last. Stories of the spirit board, an artifact said to connect the living with the dead. Stories that sent shivers down their spines, making them question their bravery. They were warned not to mess with it, but they didn't listen. They were teenagers. They were invincible. Or so they thought. The night was just beginning, and the house had many secrets yet to reveal. The attic was dark and dusty. The air was thick with the scent of old wood and forgotten memories. Cobwebs hung from every corner like delicate lace woven by time itself. The air was thick with the smell of decay, a testament to the years of neglect. The teenagers found the spirit board in the corner, hidden beneath layers of dust and time. It was covered in a white sheet, as if protecting it from the ravages of time. They looked at each other, their eyes reflecting a mixture of excitement and fear, curiosity and dread. Jake reached out and pulled the sheet away, revealing the spirit board in all its eerie glory. The spirit board gleamed in the dim light, its surface polished and smooth despite the years. It seemed to pulse with an eerie energy, as if it were alive and waiting. The planchette rested on the board. It was an invitation, a beckoning to the unknown. They hesitated for a moment, their hands hovering above the planchette, unsure of what lay ahead. Then they placed their fingertips on the planchette, feeling a strange chill run through their bodies. They started by asking simple questions. Their voices trembled at first, barely above a whisper. The planchette began to move. Slowly at first, as if testing the waters, then faster and faster, gaining confidence. It darted across the board, spelling out words and messages with a life of its own. It seemed to have a life of its own. The teenagers gasped, their eyes wide with shock and awe. They were communicating with something, but what? The question hung in the air, unanswered and ominous. The planchette spelled out words, slowly and deliberately, as if guided by an unseen force. The words sent chills down their spines, each letter forming a message that none of them could ignore. The entity told them its name, a name that echoed in the dimly lit room, reverberating through the silence, a name that whispered through their minds, lingering like a dark cloud over their thoughts. It filled them with dread, a deep, unshakable fear that gripped their hearts. The teenagers asked more questions, their curiosity battling with their growing fear. They wanted to know more, to uncover the secrets that the spirit held. But they were starting to regret it. The air grew colder, each breath visible in the dark room. The shadows in the room seemed to dance, moving with a life of their own, casting eerie shapes on the walls. The teenagers felt a presence. It was watching them. They heard whispers, faint at first, then growing louder, whispers that seemed to come from the walls themselves, as if the house was alive and speaking to them. The whispers were faint at first, then they grew louder, filling the room with a cacophony of voices. They were filled with anger and pain. Emily wanted to stop, her fear overwhelming her curiosity. She had a bad feeling, a sense of impending doom that she couldn't shake. But the others were caught up in the moment, their fascination blinding them to the danger. They were playing with fire, unaware of the consequences that awaited them. And they were about to get burned as the planchette moved violently, spelling out a final, chilling message. Section 5. The Shadow Man. The entity grew bolder. It started to show itself. At first it was just a fleeting shadow, a flicker in the corner of their eyes. Then it became clearer. A tall, shadowy figure. It lurked in the darkness. It watched them. Its eyes glowed red in the darkness. The teenagers were terrified. They tried to leave, but the entity blocked their way. It was angry. They had disturbed it, and now it was going to make them pay. Jake tried to be brave. He told the entity to leave them alone, but his voice shook with fear. The entity laughed, a cold, hollow laugh that echoed through the attic. The teenagers were trapped. They were at the mercy of the Shadow Man. Section 6. Cold Dread. The entity's presence grew stronger. It filled the attic with a cold dread. The teenagers huddled together. They were paralyzed with fear. The temperature plummeted. The air grew heavy. It was hard to breathe. The teenagers could see their breath. It hung in the air like smoke. The entity moved closer. They could feel its icy breath on their necks. The teenagers closed their eyes. They prayed for it to be over. The entity whispered in their ears. It told them their deepest fears. It played on their insecurities. The teenagers were falling apart. They were easy prey. Section 7. The board's fury. The spirit board vibrated violently. It pulsed with a malevolent energy. It was the entity's power source. It was growing stronger by the minute. The planchette spun wildly. It was out of control. The teenagers tried to remove their fingers from the planchette, but they couldn't. It was as if they were glued to it. The entity was holding them captive. The teenagers screamed for help, but no one could hear them. They were all alone with the terrifying entity. Section 8. Trapped. The attic door slammed shut. The windows were boarded up. There was no escape. The teenagers were trapped. The entity had them right where it wanted them. The room grew darker. The only light came from a single flickering light bulb. It cast long, eerie shadows on the walls. The teenagers were surrounded by darkness. They were drowning in fear. The Shadow Man circled them. It was toying with them, like a cat with a mouse. The teenagers knew that they were in grave danger. They had to find a way to stop the entity. But how? Section 9. A Glimmer of Hope. Max remembered something his grandmother had told him. Salt, he whispered. Salt weakens spirits. He looked around the attic. His eyes fell on an old salt shaker. It was lying on a dusty shelf. Max lunged for the salt shaker. He grabbed it and threw the salt at the entity. The entity shrieked in pain. It recoiled from the salt. The teenagers saw their chance. They made a run for the attic door. Section 10. The Lesson. The teenagers never went back to the old house. They never spoke of what happened that night. They couldn't. The memory was too terrifying. They had learned their lesson. Some things are best left undisturbed. The spirit board remained in the attic. It waited for its next victims. It would not be long. The spirit board always got what it wanted. Have you ever played with a spirit board? Be careful. You never know who or what you might awaken.